Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, joined, as always, by Brandon Crossan. Brandon, how are you doing tonight? I hope you're doing better than everybody at RCR.
Oh, yeah, doing wonderful, Ben, and I know you're doing better than everyone at RCR as well. Man, that's a competition meeting, isn't it? Hey, look at either side here. Thanks to our fearless leader, Joe Samaniego, I finally got my Grid Network stickers in, so they'll be populating the set here, and also whatever else I can stick that third one on. Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate that, and glad to have some physical things around the set, if you will, that show where we're at and what we're doing.
I'd show you mine, but it's on the back of my, or front, I guess I should say, of a laptop that I'm speaking to you right now through. So it'd be kind of difficult for me to do that. But I do have Brock Beard's JD up on my shelf back here, The Life and Death of a Forgotten NASCAR Legend, his first book. His second book comes out on Derek Cope here in just a couple of weeks. So I'm representing NASCAR as well. But maybe I should I do have some extra grid stickers. I didn't just get the one that's on my laptop right now. So that's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that after the show as well, Brandon. But good to see you. And yeah, certainly I'm sure a competition meeting happened this morning at RCR, and we will get to that in just a moment. But first, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Your support means the world to us. It's what allows us to continue to grow our motorsports media outlet here at Grid Network. And if you like what you see tonight, maybe you can consider joining them and helping us build towards our goals for 2024. And of course, you can follow us on all of our social media platforms as well. Most importantly, subscribe to us right here on YouTube so we can get closer to our goal of 1,000 subscribers as we approach the off season here. Now, Brandon, obviously, we had a modified race as well. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, or towards the end of the show, rather. But I think we have to start here. We'll get into it right now, right here with the Xfinity Series race. A chaotic finish, to say the least. Justin Allgaier ended up taking the win, scoring a walk-off victory to get himself into the championship four. And we'll pull up the entire result sheet for you right here. After a red flag that lasted nearly an hour, Allgaier was the one who emerged through all the chaos on an overtime restart, while Richard Childress Racing's two cars were both eliminated from championship contention. Austin Hill and Sheldon Creed tangled multiple times during the final two laps. And while Hill led at the white flag and Creed led in the final corner, not only did neither one take the win, neither one will fight for a championship next weekend in Phoenix. Creed, of course, was in a must-win situation, and Austin Hill, as you can see, didn't even remain in the top 20 after what happened on the final lap. Brandon, we'll get to the RCR drama here in just a moment, but how significant is this for Justin Allgaier, and is there any chance he can take the fight to probably the championship favorite in most people's minds, John Hunter Nemechek, and claim finally his first Xfinity title?
This is huge for Justin Allgaier to get this win in Martinsville right before Phoenix. He's come close a lot of times, and he's basically, we've already said a lot about Justin, Ben. Justin Allgaier is basically the Xfinity Series home team driver, I guess you could say. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people that would tell you, oh, I despise Justin Allgaier. I don't want him to ever win a championship. I think collectively we're all rooting for Justin Allgaier to take this championship. And I don't really know what would stop you from thinking that. And he's definitely going to be able to take the fight to John Hunter Nemechek. And you can't deny the power of momentum in this sport. It happens all the time. Guys that get a big head of steam at Miami or Martinsville, they can take it on to Phoenix. And he definitely looked like he was taking in just exactly what this will mean for junior motorsports and for everyone there with Justin Allgaier. And you don't know when he's going to hang the hat up. So this could be his last shot. You never really know. And I do remember several weeks ago, it was an interview with Kelly Miller about the possibility of Allgaier taking the championship. And she was talking about their close ties with his partners at Brandt, that big primary sponsor for Allgaier, and how that CEO was, really, really hyped for the chance or the opportunity to have a championship, and it sounds like a fun time all around if that were true. So he's got the power to do it, and the one to take John Hunter if he can.
Yeah, and think of Brandt, and what they've been through with Justin Allgaier. They've been with him since his Turner Motorsports days. And then he got an opportunity to go to Cup with H. Scott Motorsports, and obviously not the equipment that he needed to have a real true chance of succeeding there long term. Decided, you know what, let's drop back down to Xfinity. Let's take this opportunity with Junior Motorsports. He certainly made the most of it. And, Brandon, we were talking in the chat just yesterday after the Cup race about Denny Hamlin. And has he surpassed the Junior Johnsons and the Mark Martins and, maybe the Carl Edwardses of the world? Is he the best driver in Cup Series history to never win a championship? I look at Justin Allgaier, and maybe I'm not going to go so far as to say the entire 40-plus year history of this series as we know it today. But certainly of the last several years, I think you have to look at Justin Allgaier as one of the best Xfinity lifers, so to speak, that's still yet to win a championship. This, I think, it's hard to imagine coming in with more momentum than winning the penultimate race at a track that he's been dying to win at for so long and getting the job done and emerging through the chaos to do that. I think he's in very good position to take this championship fight to John Hunter Nemechek. Now, I still think Nemechek is the favorite. He's ultimately going to be my pick. We'll get into all of our picks later on here in the show. I picked him a couple of weeks ago on an Instagram Q&A, and I'm certainly not going to change my tune now based on just one race here. But could Allgaier win the championship? Absolutely. I think he is certainly in a strong position, as strong as he's ever been, to make a statement. And can you imagine what that would mean to him at this point in his career? We're talking about, when is Denny Hamlin? Is he ever going to win a Cup Series championship? I think Justin Allgaier's been asking the same question of himself for several years now in the Xfinity Series, particularly since he joined Junior Motorsports and the powerhouse organization that is. I think he's got a real great chance of it next weekend at Phoenix.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what you guys in the chat think about that. But if there's ever
one right here,
yeah, I agree with you. If Allgaier was ever going to win, this is the year. Yeah, well, and I'll side with Dave Moody on this. No one in NASCAR is due anything. No one deserves anything. They always go out there and they earn it. So yeah, no one's due anything. Hamlin's never due a championship. Mark Martin was never due a championship. They had to go out there and take it with the rules and regulations that were at the time. And same for Hamlin now. That baffled me, man. He had everything going for him. I know I'm not on there for the Cup side of things, but man, he had everything going for him. And I thought, with 100 laps to go, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. And how William Byron, I know I'm going off the tangent here, but how William Byron was able to just basically claw on hands and knees with that Pods car. Where did the sponsorship come from? I don't think I've seen that with them yet, but just that baffled my mind, seeing him go sink back in the field in 22nd or whatever it was, and somehow still having enough points over Hamlin. It just was a weird race. But back to Xfinity, if Allgaier is ever going to do it, yes, Adam, I agree with you, and Ben, if he's ever going to do it, this is it. I don't know if you're ever going to get a better lookout head into the desert than this.
Brandon, you reminded me of one of my favorite interactions on Twitter that I've ever had, or X now, I have to say. Sorry, I always still call it Twitter in our outros. Long live the bird, right? But no, I one of my favorite interactions ever was, J.R. Hildebrand was, I think, talking back to a fan that was, unfairly criticizing him. And I entered the conversation and I said, I've followed your career ever since, your Panther days in 2011, and being a fan of Dan Weldon, obviously what happened to him at Las Vegas, I was glad to see him win that race. But I feel like if anybody's owed anything, it's got to be you, right? That was like destiny that happened for Dan at Indy that year. And JR responded to me and he said, "Nah, man, she doesn't know you. The track just kind of picks the winner, and you've got to go out and execute everything to the best of your ability, and whatever happens, happens." And I'm paraphrasing here what he said, but it was that attitude that really stuck with me. And I think to your point, quoting Dave Moody as well, nobody's owed anything in this sport. There's so much that has to go your way, and there's so much that's outside of your control. We have a super speedway in the playoffs, for crying out loud. You can be minding your own business in the middle of the pack. Somebody loses an engine at the front of it and spills oil on the track, causes a massive wreck, and that can totally change the outcome of your championship chances. It's part of why I don't like this system. I think the sport is simply too chaotic to to justify something like this, but it's the reality of the situation. It's where we are. There's so much that has to go your way. And I think, that's the mentality that you have to have at the end of the day. We can say, oh, he's due for a good run here. He's due for a title run there. They're not, that's what it comes down to in the sport. And you have to go out and execute. Nobody owes you anything. And, we see it with, championship favorites all the time. I thought Denny Hamlin for sure. I wouldn't necessarily say that, you look at the season that he's had and he's, been in Kevin Harvick 2020 levels of dominant. That's another guy that didn't make a championship for you can point to. But, what happens sometimes. And I think it's certainly a surprise that Hamlin didn't make it, but that's the way the cards fell in this round of 8. Well, let's move on and let's talk about what everybody's been talking about here the last, 48 hours or so. Let's talk about the RCR teammates and what happened on the last couple of laps on that overtime restart. We got a couple of really interesting sound bites from this team here. After the race, Austin Hill said he was pretty excited for Sheldon Creed to leave RCR and also appeared to spill the beans as to where Creed is expected to drive next season, that being Joe Gibbs Racing. Richard Childress himself said, and this is a direct quote, "I've had drivers drive for me before. Nobody is stupid as Sheldon Creed." I can hardly get it out with a straight face. It's almost unbelievable that he would say something like that. But that's a direct quote. I'm not making that up. Brandon, did Austin Hill and Richard Childress cross the line with their comments here?
Yeah, you did. You're his teammate, and Richard Childress, you signed him on. I don't understand that. And Andy Petrie too. Whatever he yelled at Sheldon also needs to be addressed here. Whatever that was, I think he actually apologized later on, but Andy Petrie was basically just upset that Sheldon didn't, race him off 4 at least. Try to race Allgaier off 4. He claimed that he wasn't trying out of 4 to win the race because it was a must-win for them, and Hill was thinking, it's going to be a must-win for them too, depending on where Creed was going to be placing himself there. Ironically enough, you pointed out pre-show, Sheldon Creed finished 2nd, and Austin Hill finished 21st. That's their car numbers. So let's get our tinfoil hats out and start. Cat has the zoomies. Yeah, let's get our
tinfoil hat out for you.
Yeah, tinfoil hats out and start thinking NASCAR script writers, I guess. Whatever that is, whatever that nonsense is.
There's got to be some sort of connection there with the numerology and everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
Listen, man, I don't feel like the team's been around 50 years, right? Like, do you know how impressive of a statement that is? You've had how many drivers drive for you over literally half of a century? Yet Sheldon Creed is the one that you're saying, oh, this is the stupidest guy I've ever had drive. I mean, you can't make this up.
That's pretty rough. I don't know, and I hope he comes back at Phoenix and addresses that. I hope someone asks him about that, because that kind of general kind of comment needs to be addressed. It needs to be. Please define that, Mr. Childress. Please explain to us what that meant. I highly doubt that's actually what he means. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Richard Childress he's a respectable man. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I think this is not actually what he means. That it was a heat of the moment comment, and that he probably didn't mean with that full intention. So I don't want to run off with it and call foul and say, "Oh, Richard Childress doesn't know what he's talking about." But still, that kind of thing, it needs to be defined.
Yeah, I don't usually go here, but for a number of reasons, I feel less bad going here than I normally would. But I will just point out, John West Townley drove for Richard Childress.
That he did.
I mean, if we're going to put Sheldon Creed on that level, I mean, Sheldon Creed is an ARCA champion, is a truck champion. Oh, he hasn't had the success in Xfinity that he's had in the other divisions, in the other series that he's driven in. But I mean, that is quite a statement for a team that has been around as long as RCR has. And I'm with you, Brandon. I hope that this was just heat of the moment and frustration, and it's obviously an ugly divorce, and Creed's not coming back there next year. We joked about the competition meetings. I've mentioned backstage as well. I think back to when Brian Vickers won his first race with Hendrick. and inadvertently spinning out Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Talladega to make that happen. And I'm sure people were thinking, oh, that must have been an interesting competition meeting, but they were even quick to point out on the NBC broadcast that day, Brian Vickers was no longer allowed in the Hendrick team meetings at that point because he was on his way to Red Bull with Toyota in 07. I don't know. Is Sheldon Creed? I mean, there are some questions as to whether or not Creed should even be in the car this upcoming weekend at Phoenix. Like, if you're Jesse Love, are you kind of hoping, oh, maybe this is getting really tense? Hey, if you guys need a driver, we've already clinched the ARCA championship. Our season's over.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe Gibbs returns the favor, brings the 54 back out, or I don't know who's in the 19 this weekend. I know, but that ride has rotated quite a bit with Mike Snyder and Joe Graff Jr. and Trevor Bayne and Ryan Truex and all sorts of people this year. But, I don't know. Maybe, this will lead nicely into a follow-up here for you, Brandon. With where this situation is right now, is there something to be said about maybe Sheldon Creed and RCR should just completely walk away from this uncomfortable, awkward weekend coming up at Phoenix and, hey, we'll release you from your contract to race early? Is there any merit to that discussion being had?
No, I don't want them. I don't want them to do that. I want him to finish it out. He's got a contract. Finish it out. It goes for all this. And the fact that there's drama is not Sheldon Creed's fault per se. It's all been put upon him. It's not his fault. It's RCR making a mess of themselves and frankly, embarrassing themselves between all their leadership. So, no, you sign this guy for the rest of the 2023 season. Let him race at Phoenix. Put him in the 2-car. Let him stay there. Let him race one more time. And this could be, he's still got a fast hot rod. This could end up being like a KBM truck story where the driver totally hates the team owner, but goes out and wins it and shows them what for.
Yeah, back to Todd Gill. Yeah, at Martinsville of all places, right?
Yeah,
this always seems to happen. We always get some sort of drama like this. You think back to this race last year, and Brandon Jones talked about how he couldn't wait to get out of Joe Gibbs Racing. Now I think Sheldon Creed can't wait to get into Joe Gibbs Racing, and
it's a trap too. Don't worry, buddy. You're going to another trap. They have a bad history too.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But I will note, Matt DiBenedetto got eliminated from the playoffs with Rackley War. What's he doing right now? It's not like it would be unprecedented for him to get released a race early, or maybe he just says, you know what, I've had enough. I don't want to deal with you people. Because I think to your point, Brandon, as well, could you make the argument that Creed pushed the issue a little bit and, maybe rubbed some fenders the wrong way? Of course. But, there were 15 cautions. I made the joke. I tweeted this out during the race. Welcome to the Dead on Tools 250 cautions of Martinsville on USA Network, right? It was just, there was so much of his race was run under yellow. And I said this on yesterday's wrap-up show as well. I love this package. I love what the Xfinity Series has here. I think there's, and it's a common theme we always talk about on the show, I think there's a lack of respect, particularly with the young drivers in the Xfinity and Truck Series level, that leads to chaos like this. And
for sure.
I forget who sent the tweet out. Somebody said, I think it was maybe Gluck that said that they had to go to Walmart to get more Tide to treat the surface of the racetrack because there was so much oil spilled after the Xfinity race. You've got to be kidding me. Like that's the level of carnage that we saw. But to bring it all back, I don't know if Sheldon Creed has anywhere close to the most blood on his hands, so to speak, based on the amount of torn up race cars that we saw at the end of that race, because everybody was driving over their heads at some point or another. How many cars weren't? Justin Allgaier hit the wall coming across the start finish line the final lap. He ended up bouncing back to win the race. I think that's something that got lost in all that. That's going to make for a fantastic race to win diecast with how much damage is on the right side of that car. And he and Creed, to your point as well, I think this is maybe what Andy Petrie was getting at. Maybe if Creed comes off that corner straight and doesn't rub on the side of the 7 car there, does he maybe win the race by inches? And we're having an entirely different conversation right now. It's something to think about.
Yeah, clearly it was something that Andy Petrie saw, of course he could have done that off 4, and I guess just thought that Sheldon was focusing on the wrong thing, and by the time they got to the line, it was too late. Joe says, I agree, RCR Racing mess starts with the leadership. The racing mess starts with the leadership. Richard and Andy could have radio to think big picture, but have both cars in instead. Nope, no cars. Yeah, and that's exactly what I think Andy was thinking too. Like from his perspective, I was about to have one at Phoenix. Now I've got none, and so therefore I'm upset, and I have the right to be upset.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Creed finishes first, he'll finish the second. You got two, and I think that's Joe's point there. Now, again, I don't want to get into the whole team orders thing because people know how I feel about that as well, and I think a lot of people despise team orders, and you want to like. I'm not saying Austin Hill lay over, and and we went through this. I mean, last year at the same race with Ty Gibbs, right? Ty Gibbs was already locked into a championship 4. He did not need to win that race to go have a championship chance at Phoenix. And he still punted Brandon Jones out of the way. The problem wasn't that he raced Brandon Jones hard for the win, even though Brandon Jones needed the win to make the championship 4. The problem was how he took the lead from Brandon Jones and that setting off the firestorm that did. But everybody's saying, Ty Gibbs should have just, stood by and finished in second place and let his teammate win the race to go to a championship 4. I don't believe that at all. It was how he did it that was the issue. So people saying, Austin Hill should have, been the ultimate team player and we're just talking about with Allgaier, like a win in the penultimate race of the year. Do you know how much momentum and positive confidence boost that has to be for any driver? I mean, Austin Hill would, heck yeah, you go do everything you can to win that race within reason. Obviously, you don't do what Ty Gibbs did last year, and deal with the consequences of that. But ultimately, to have a situation in RCR, I completely get Richard Childress and Andy Petrie's frustration in particular as team leaders and everything. But again, to go so far as to call Sheldon Creed the stupidest driver you've ever had,
it's a stretch.
Yeah, and there's got to be something's got to work itself out, because ultimately I would bet my money on Sheldon Creed being in the 2 car this weekend. I wouldn't be, my jaw wouldn't be on the floor if I read something in the next couple of days that says he won't be. But I'd venture a guess he probably will be. They're probably going to, ride it out and do this one last race together, and then maybe not so peacefully part ways, but go their separate ways heading into 24. Something's got to improve over there.
John West-Townley is the obvious, finger to point out. Like, have you seen that? But also, like, look at the Cup side. Like, have you seen Austin Dillon? Like, I know he's his blood, but does he really have better? I don't really have any stats to back this up.
I'm not going to go there because I don't want to insult Austin Dillon's intelligence or anything.
I'm not saying he's no.
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying. He's certainly underperformed. I think Kyle Busch getting in here and winning 3 races this year, I think it's certainly proven that. Again, John, and we should be clear. John West-Townley's story is tragic. How that ended, and it's an awful situation. But I'm sorry. I struggle to have very much sympathy for the man after ultimately what ended his life and very nearly ended his fiance's life. It's just awful situation. We don't need to go there right now, but it makes me feel slightly less bad about criticizing his on track antics, particularly in the late 2000s, early 2010s period, which is when he drove for Richard Childress. And you have somebody like that in your team's history, but yet a Truck Series champion who has come close on multiple occasions to winning a race for you this year, and just happened to get in an unpleasant sort of deal with his teammate here, trying to do everything he could to make the championship 4 and have a shot to win a championship next weekend in Phoenix. And you're going to say he's the stupidest driver you've ever had in the 50-plus year history of RCR. I'm sorry, I don't like that.
That doesn't work. Needs some explaining at Phoenix.
It certainly
really hope they get the mics on him immediately.
Yes, but to Austin Hill's point as well. I think Jesse Love. I don't think he's necessarily been, a terrible, awful driver that runs over everybody in ARCA. But if you've seen the racing in ARCA, that those guys are prone to getting in. What happened with him and that 18 car, last year going for the Owners Championship at Toledo. Like, Jesse Love's had some run-ins as well.
Yeah,
if it gets to a point where they're in a similar position next year, I would not necessarily guarantee that Jesse Love's going to treat you any more fairly than Sheldon Creed did this year. So Austin Hill might be in for a rude awakening as well. We'll see.
Yeah, that the butt beating and banging over there, that's kind of what they do. That's all they know.
Yeah.
So when they bring it up the ladder with them.
And it's what you have to do in this format to give yourself a chance at championship glory a lot of the time. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's shift gears here. Let's talk about something that, again, we don't always get to talk about on this show, but whenever it's a companion race weekend, and this particularly being the season finale, I want to talk about the Whelen Modified Tour here a little bit. Let's show some love to Ron Silk, a Whelen Modified Tour champion once again. His second title, 12 years after he won his first in 2011. He edged out three-time series champion Justin Bonsignor, who put up a good fight. You see him up there ultimately finishing second, but it was not enough to overtake Silk in the points. Ryan Preece, meanwhile, let's give a shout out to him. He returned to his modified roots, and it looked like he never left. He took the win, the 2013 champion's first victory of the series since 2021. So, Brandon, Corey LaJoie won this race last year. Now, Preece wins it this year. Preece also won an ARCA West race at Sonoma earlier this season. Can wins in races like this, even though it's not one of the three national touring divisions, can this still be something that gives them a confidence boost, particularly for Preece after the difficult season that he's had in the Cup Series this year?
I think it can give you, as someone who's not a racer, we preface that with every answer we give on the show, but I think it can help you with racecraft as far as situations in the cockpit. But as far as being a Cup regular, I don't think there's any comparison whatsoever between a Whelen Modified Tour machine and the NASCAR Cup Series. It's just not even close anymore. Maybe the tire width might be a similarity with the increased width they have on the tires for the Cup cars, but I don't think there's any correlation we can make at all anymore. Maybe that you probably could have made 20 years ago, but I do think it can certainly bring him confidence and momentum to whatever he's doing. Glad he's signed back with Stewart Haas. They definitely need another year to figure things out, and it'll just be interesting to see what goes on there in 2024 and what happens all around there with Preece.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Silk and Bonsignor a little bit here. Let's talk about Preece as well, because Preece is a champion of a series as well as, like I was mentioning, Silk and Bonsignor won two of a championship this year. But think about drivers like Richie Evans and Mike Stefanik. They're in the Hall of Fame for NASCAR, deservedly so. Brandon, you look at today's modified champions. Do you think they deserve a little bit more recognition for their accomplishments?
Certainly, yeah. They're out there doing the same type of hard-nosed driving that you saw from Richie Evans and Mike Stefanik back in the day. And I certainly think Bonsignor and Silk are names you could certainly see in the Hall of Fame in some future class down the road. We talk about when we have the pair race on these kind of weekends, we like to bring up the fact that the Whelen Modified Tour needs some more exposure. It could certainly be on a more regular, or maybe a little more easily accessed avenue, and it'd be nice to have live sometimes too. That would be the most important part, I think.
Yeah, we need the Flow Racing subscription to catch it live. You can catch a replay there, or I believe it's 11 a.m. on CNBC, Sunday, November 5th, the same day as the Cup Series Championship 4 finale. You can catch a condensed replay on the Literal Consumer News and Business Channel. That's where you get your Whelen Modified Tour action on TV these days via NBC Sports.
That just doesn't fly for me.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, well, and I mean, Ryan Preece in particular, I want to spend a couple minutes talking about him here. I went back and I watched the finish of the race before we came on the show tonight. I didn't realize that was his 26th win, they said, in Whelen Modified Tour competition. And, I know Ryan Preece has not had that same level of success in the Cup Series. I know he's been, criticized along with, his Stewart Haas teammates this year with a dreadful season that there's really no way around it that they've had on the Cup Series side of things. But, I think a lot of times we're so quick to look at drivers who underperform at the Cup Series level, or just, maybe don't find themselves in the right situation. And, people get on to Twitter or get on their cell phones and just, start typing away the keyboard warriors, for lack of better terms, and call them talentless hacks and say they have no business being in the sport or whatever. But, I think a lot of times we're too quick to do that, and we forget, sometimes drivers just need the right opportunity and to be in the right place at the right time. And Ryan Preece, he's gotten his Cup opportunities and Xfinity opportunities because of his great success here in the Modified Series. And Ryan Preece is a NASCAR champion. That is objective fact. He is a NASCAR champion, and I think he deserves some credit for that. And it's a testament to the talent that he has, and unfortunately just hasn't quite been able to capture that same level of magic in the Cup Series. I'm hopeful that Stewart-Haas Racing can rebound a little bit next year, and he can show what he's capable of, because he's won a couple times in Xfinity. We got that truck win as well with David Gilliland Racing, and has kind of bounced around all three series. Now seems to finally have a nice home here with Stewart-Haas, and continues to come out at least a couple times a year and return to his roots. And I think that's impressive as well. Like you were mentioning, Brandon, there's very little correlation between a Cup Series next gen car and a Whelen Modified Tour car. And yet here Ryan Preece comes in and looks like he never left. And it's why, I always, as much as I don't like seeing it in Xfinity and trucks, I tip my hat to Kyle Busch, because there's not as much overlap between that truck and the next gen Cup car. And yet every time he jumps in, it looks like he's a series regular who does this on a weekly basis. And seems like as often as not, at least, he goes out and wins the race. And Ryan Preece did just that this weekend. All credit to him. Justin Bonsignor as well. I know he's got to be feeling a little bit down, missing out on another championship. But to your point as well, Brandon, I think, that's a name that, maybe 10 to 20 years down the road, we might be seeing that name on the NASCAR Hall of Fame ballot. I think Ted Christopher deserves a little bit more recognition. God rest his soul. I really would love to see him in the Hall of Fame one day. I think what he's meant to the Modified Tour Series, a champion of that series as well, he deserves some recognition. Mike Stefanik, I think, was long overdue. It's a shame that he didn't get to give his own speech going into the Hall of Fame. Richie Evans, I think, was really the first one that proved it's not the Cup Hall of Fame, it's the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and he certainly is a deserving Hall of Famer as well. So great Modified Tour action this weekend at Martinsville. And like you said, Brandon, hopefully we can get a little bit stronger coverage for this series, because I really enjoy talking about it. And every time, it's great to see, big races like this. Look at who finished in 10th. You want to talk about the Hall of Fame? Bobby Labonte down there. Ryan Newman coming back.
Next to him,
staying active in this series. I know he loves racing the Modifieds. Joey Coulter, that's a name I feel like we haven't seen in a while. And, flashbacks to the Truck Series days a little bit. This is a great series. There's a lot of great competitors here, and I think that this is something that deserves a lot more spotlight and attention, and hopefully we can do a better job here, even on Grid Live Encore, giving it to this series in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes I think about Ryan Preece, when you get your one shot in Cup, you need to take it and keep it as long as you can. But is he robbing the Whelen Modified Tour Series of his talent by not being in his niche and dominating and having big battles with Bonsignor and Silk and the rest? He's obviously really talented in that car. And I know the deals look a lot better on the Cup side, but if, I guess it just matters where he's having fun, I guess. If he's still having fun in the Cup Series, why take him out? He just got his way back in. So got to enjoy that while you can, especially with Stewart-Haas. They're not big this year, but it always changes. They got a new body coming next year, so things can always change. But I think, is he missing his good years, or will he do it on later on down the road? Will he go back to the Modifieds and be there full time? But sometimes some of these guys that are in Cup, their talents really could be used probably in a different, more regional tour or lower series, and be out there and add some more heat to the mix.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And again, I'm sure, Ryan Preece has to be thinking, how in the world can you turn down a Cup drive with a team like, like Stewart-Haas Racing? But
yeah,
there is that other side of it as well. If if your bread and butter is the modifieds, and I know that there's not as much prestige, they don't pay as well and everything, and you got to take that into consideration too. But I think it's certainly, at the very least, if this ends up not working out and maybe Stuart Haas is just entering a down period, I hope that's not the case. I hope he can rebound, but it gives him something to fall back on at the very least. He certainly has that opportunity waiting for him, I think, and but I think to that point as well. I think when Ryan Preece, I remember when he first got his cup deal with JTG Doherty and, getting it again now with Stuart Haas, I feel like that's not just a win for Ryan Preece. I feel like a lot of guys in that modified field, that's got to be some sort of validation for all of them, right? Guys like us can make it to the top level here in this sport the old-fashioned way. It's still possible, even in this era of paid drivers, in this era where sponsorship matters above all else, you still see drivers like Ryan Preece sometimes break through, and I think that can give them encouragement as well.
And I hope when Josh Berry, I hope he has a great Cup Series career. Cool. But if that ever does die down or it ever does start not clicking anymore, I hope he does go back to his roots and goes back there and does those late model races and dominates like I know he can. Absolutely.
All right, well, it's that time of the show once again, Brandon. Do you have a one shining moment for us as we close out the show tonight?
Yeah, I conjured up a couple. Thinking about the news we got this week with Eric Almirola, and that hit me a little bit. Just realizing that last year we thought he was going to be done, and this year he's actually done, and Smithfield's going to leave with him. They were a big supporter of him and his family. I just want to shout out Eric Almirola for all the years he's been in the Cup Series, and not everyone's favorite driver, not always the best driver out in the field, but him and Michael McDowell. They're just there's a group of drivers out there that are really not afraid to share their faith publicly, and Eric, you can certainly put Eric Almirola in one of those camps. So that's just always been a big thing for me to see Eric Almirola not ashamed of the gospel and not afraid to put that out on social media. It was even a part of his closing statements of announcing his retirement. He was able to do that on his own terms. And P2 at Martinsville almost took it in the penultimate race of the year. That was cool to see that run, and he's still got a chance to show something at Phoenix as well. Also, want to give a shout out to William Byron and Rudy Fugle. That duo right there, I can't believe they're in the championship four. That was just the weirdest thing I've seen in a while. Just absolute chaos for them. There's no way. They kept bouncing off the walls, dipping back on the outside groove and having 7 people pass them. I don't know what Rudy was able to tell him to say, it's okay, we got this, keep doing your thing, keep hitting your marks. They're fighting for a championship in Phoenix. And if they take it, it's gonna be one of those weird championships. It already is a weird one because we got Larson in the 3 Bs, as I called it in the chat. We got Larson, Bell, Byron, and Blaney. Yes. Yeah, Larson and the Bs. And Larson is the elder statesman here in the Champ 4. So no more long season veterans in the mix. It's all we've either never won it before or it's going to be our second championship. So just really, really cool championship weekend approaching us.
Yeah, all guys have come into the sport within the last decade, at least on a full-time basis. So still going to have a relatively young champion. I know Larson has already won one, but kind of feels like this is the year. At the very least, I know we've kind of already seen a changing of the guard in many respects, but we might look back on this championship 4 in this year and say this is when it really, came to fruition for this new guard and these championship 4 drivers in particular. I want to give a shout out. I know these moments sometimes come to me late in the show, but Riley Herbst, another top 5 coming through the chaos once again. But I know we talked about this after he won Las Vegas. What could have been if he had found his way into the playoffs? Do you know what his last 4 finishes are in that Stuart Haas Racing Xfinity car?
I think they're pretty consistent.
1st, 2nd, and 4th. 4 top 4 finishes in the last 4 races for Riley Herbst. So if he only just could have gotten in, oh man, we'd be talking about him having a shot at a championship next weekend. Unfortunately, the highest he's going to finish, and it's where he's going to finish because he has such a massive gap over Brandon Jones now on the points. He's going to finish 13th in the standings, but this end of season form is not indicative of a driver that's 13th in the standings. It's indicative of a driver that has taken a massive step forward this year. And again, we're never going to forget that commanding, dominant victory that he had at Las Vegas just a couple of weeks ago, but he is proving that was no fluke. And all credit where it's due to him. I know he's been the butt of a lot of jokes over the last several years, but give him. Well, it wasn't just you, Brandon. Everybody. The company that his dad owns. Until this year when they took the Herbst off the name, but it being called Terrible Herbst, I think just like opened the floodgates for the trolls to come out and say some things about Riley and And in complete fairness, Riley wasn't doing too much on the track to shut them up, but he certainly has these last 4 weeks here. It's been really impressive to see. Want to give him a shout out and a shining moment before we close out the show tonight. And that's going to do it for another episode of Grid Live Encore. So thank you all, as always, so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. X, that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads, and most importantly, like I mentioned, right here on YouTube. Join us on our journey to 1,000 subscribers and beyond. Again, if you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes after the show to consider joining our Patreon. Join Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in Grid Network to help keep us on the air throughout 2023. And as you can see, our long-term goal heading into next year of $500 per month. That will allow us to begin attending races on site on a more regular basis, and that expands our coverage for you, the viewers. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit the link in the description box below to buy me a coffee. You can buy a coffee specifically for your favorite on-air talent as well. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Or again, if you're watching on YouTube, we now have the super chats and super thanks enabled as well. Now on Wednesday, don't miss Grid Tonight with Kobe Lamb, with Josh Birch and Matt White. And of course, you can stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage this upcoming weekend. As always, Women in Motorsports is back as well. We're trying to get an update on that, so hopefully we'll have a chance to tape that at some point this week. So stay tuned for that. Brandon, any final thoughts? And do you have championship picks for us? I'll open this up to the Cup Series as well, since you're not always on the wrap-up shows, or really ever on the wrap-up shows, I should say. Who do you have taking the championships across the top three divisions this weekend at Phoenix?
Oh, okay. So I really just focused on thinking of trucks and Xfinity, but I can give a Cup one off the top of my head, I guess. Okay, so trucks, I'm going to defer away from the favorite. I'm going to say no Corey Heim. I'm going to say Carson Hocevar is going to carry his Miami momentum and take Phoenix and ride off into the sunset. For Xfinity, I'm going to go with the status quo, say Justin Allgaier is going to have the best shot he's ever had, but he's still not going to get it over John Hunter Nemechek. I got to go with the gut there and say John Hunter's going to get it done with Toyota, and he's going to be ready for Legacy Motor Club in 2024. Okay, Cup Series. Got to think about it again. Byron and Larson are already in the sweet spots. Blaney and Bell kind of outside looking in, although Blaney just got the win. So I'll say Larson's going for number 2. I feel like he's that good of a talent. He'll face the adversity. He's always going to be up for the challenge, and Phoenix definitely is that. I think he'll stay clean and get a second championship of what's going to be many in his long career.
I made these picks a few weeks ago, just kind of on a whim, and I see no reason to change them. So I'm going to stick with Brandon Enfinger in the trucks. I like that send-off story for GMS Racing. John Hunter Nemechek, I think, is the de facto favorite, which means he'll probably lose an engine and cost everybody a lot of fantasy money. But that's just the way this format rolls. But even then, I think, he's got to be the favorite at this point with how he's run, especially now with Austin Hill, who I think was kind of a de facto number 2 much throughout the year. And, them trading off wins now that he's not in a championship 4, I think it really opens the door for a golden opportunity for John Hunter Nemechek. And then on the Cup Series side of things, I'm going to stick with William Byron. I just kind of went with him on a whim. I know that he had to claw and scrape his way to make sure he stayed in that position to have a chance to fight for a championship this upcoming weekend. But he's won a lot of races this year, and I think he's really started to come into his own. I could certainly see him coming away with a championship trophy on Sunday evening.
Let's be honest, though. Even before we see qualifying for Phoenix, the championship for the Cup side is a crapshoot.
Yeah, I think and to the point that we talked about on yesterday's wrap-up show as well. I think any one of these championship 4, and I would even go so far as to say this for Xfinity and trucks as well. Any one of the 4 in any of the 3 series, I think, has an argument to be made for the championship. It's not like anybody just lagged into the championship 4 and fell in by accident and did the bare minimum to get no. All 4 of these drivers in all 3 series have an argument to be made. And I think it's going to make for a very interesting championship fight. Maybe not so much on the ARCA West side of things. I think Sean Higurani's got that one wrapped up. Probably just needs to take the green flag, and that'll be it. It's much deserved, though. He's certainly, after Landon Lewis had to step away from that ride, been a season where he's scored the most points and won the most races, a deserving champion elect, if you will. But that's not how we do it in the top 3 series. And we've got 4 very worthy championship challengers in all 3 series here. I think it's going to be a very interesting weekend to follow here as we look ahead. And we, of course, will have all the recaps for you here on Grid Live Encore in roughly 168 hours from now. Joe Samaniego, one final comment before we close out tonight. I don't see any heavy favorite in the Cup Series. Xfinity, John Hunter Nemechek is the favorite. I think that's the general consensus here for all of us. For Brandon,
sitting behind me here is his father in the front row, Joe, from his Busch days. So there you go. Just now thought of that. Okay.
All right. For Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a wonderful rest of your week. We will see you next week to recap championship weekend in Phoenix.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.